Welcome back to the Weekend Warrior Show, everyone. I'm your host, Kurt Sandoval, with Dr. Robert Klapper. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great.
How was your week?
My week was great. Last Friday, as you know, in baseball, they say it's hitting for the cycle, a single, double, triple home run. I did a hip replacement, shoulder replacement, and 3 knee replacements. What was great, though, is the team that I have, because I can't do it myself, even though I'm a surgeon. I need a nurse and a tech and an x-ray tech, anesthesia. There's a whole team of people. But they don't get to come to the office to see the gratefulness of the patients who now walk without pain and can move their arm without pain and feel 20 years younger. But the 5 cases that I did last Friday, each and every one of them, I had done their other shoulder replacement, their other knee replacement, their other hip replacement. So it's great for me for the team in the operating room, rather than my team in the office, to actually see what it's like for a grateful patient to say, yes, what you are doing in the operating room is so terrific that I'm back for the other side.
That speaks volume that they came back for the other side, and it's awesome just to help alleviate pain. I'll tell you the highlight for me. I cover a lot of sports in my life, and Sunday covered the Rams, and their offense looked terrific against the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL in Cleveland. And Saturday night, LAFC at home in just a spectacular atmosphere. And I'm not a huge soccer fan, but it's just electric, the 32-52 of all these crazy fans. But the number 1 highlight for my sports weekend was a 2nd place finish in the regional cheerleading competition by West Ranch, and my daughter, who is a captain of the cheer team and trying to go to college as a gymnastics cheerleader, they finished 2nd in regionals. And it was just awesome to hang, daddy, I work a lot of weekends, just to be down in Irvine and hang with my daughter and stand back and watch her do her thing.
That's awesome.
It was spectacular. But I will make the transition to a crazy, crazy weekend. I thought walking in, don't get started on this, Curtis J. But this college football thing drove me crazy this weekend. And we're a show about the Weekend Warrior and the Warriors, and we're going to talk about Florida State's quarterback. I haven't asked you, do you have any thoughts on the Final Four that they picked for the college football and snubbing Florida State?
I do. My thought is this. Calm down. Next year there'll be 12 teams, and the problem that we have will be fixed. And there's something to be said for the fact that it is not fair that actually makes it compelling.
That's the thing. And you always go through life in the lens you're looking through.
Right.
And that lens is always changing. And the thing that bothered is maybe too strong or broke my heart, is if I'm a parent of a defensive player at Florida State and they played Louisville, who's averaging 30 points a game this year, and they held them to 6 points, and they say, because Travis wasn't playing, Jordan Travis, we're not going to invite you to the national championship. I know you didn't do anything wrong. Right. You won all your games. But making the segue to Jordan Travis, a couple weeks ago, he's out for the season with a horrific leg injury, lower leg. When you saw that, what did you see as an orthopedic surgeon?
I see through the uniform. I see through the skin. I see the bone and the joint and the ligaments and the tendons and the muscles and the cartilage. That's what I see. We saw, if you really look carefully, his foot's going in one direction and his knee and his leg is going in the other direction. That's a fracture dislocation of his ankle. And we've seen this exact injury before, similar injury, I won't say exact because nothing's ever exact, in Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward did a fracture dislocation where we saw his foot going in one direction and the rest of his leg going in another direction. And Gordon Hayward, 1 year to the date after that occurred, was suited up and playing again in the NBA. So what I would say to the family and to the quarterback, Jordan Travis, you will be playing on Sundays. And that's because of the magic, the the beautiful technology that we have now that makes season-ending, career-ending injuries now something that gets you back to be a professional athlete again.
And Paul George, similar or the same?
So it's similar in the sense that he broke his tibia, and so did Jordan Travis. That's what's fractured. But
well, I'm going to interrupt you. You throw around tibia like it's
right.
It's my finger. What is the tibia?
So the tibia is the shin bone. It's the connection between your knee and your ankle. And there's a little bone on the side called the fibula, which we're not going to really need to talk about, although that usually is injured as well, fractured as well. But 85% of the weight of when you take a step goes through the big bone, which is the tibia. And we saw Paul George when he was playing, good job, Eli, because that's actually when he crashed into the stanchion.
Yeah.
We all remembered, and snapped in half. Well, in the world of real estate, what do they say?
Location.
Exactly. And in the world of orthopedics, that's what we say as well. Okay, the tibia goes from your knee to your ankle. They're not all the same in terms of the fracture's location. So in the case of Paul George, when you have the snap in the bone in the mid-shaft, and it's usually like taking a piece of chalk, tubular, and just snapping it in half, oftentimes there's actually a fragment, we call it a butterfly fragment, that comes off. But for the most part, in the mid-shaft of the tibia, when we have to deal with that fracture, and it's in a bone, for example, where you're actually loading, you're walking on your leg, the best way to treat it is to shish kebab the bone. And I brought one from the operating room. This is a titanium rod that I drill a hole in the top of the tibia, different sizes, you measure, but you run it down the center.
Are you kidding me? You run something like this down the center of the bone.
So let's do a Klapper vision, Kurt Sandoval.
Oh my gosh.
Here is your tibia.
My tibia is already hurting. I'm just, your Klapper visions are just like,
So that's a straw.
Okay, that's my tibia.
That's your tibia. It's a hollow tube.
Yeah.
The cortex is the plastic of the straw. It's hollow. That's the intramedullary canal. And it's different kind of bone. Just like the straw has this hard outside and a hollow inside. Well, your tibia is just like that McDonald's straw.
Is that right?
Exactly.
My tibia is hollow inside.
Yes. And in essence, to get the crookedness, the rotation, the break, and the muscles that attach to the bone, pull it in all different directions. In surgery, we have tools that we can use that allow us to pull it apart, get it lined up straight again, rotate it in the proper, and then we use the titanium rod is your toothpick. We drop a toothpick down the center of the straw, which immediately allows it to be lined up straight again.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Now, the old days, we just did that, and we often had trouble because of rotation. As you walk, as your muscles pull, you may have lined it up straight with the toothpick in the straw or the rod in the tibia, but it would now rotate. So take a look what we're doing now. You see these holes on the side of the toothpick, the side of the titanium nail? They allow me to put screws 90 degrees through the tibia, top and bottom, and allows me to lock into place.
So it doesn't rotate.
Exactly.
So you said in the old days. Is this 5 years ago, 20 years ago? What are you talking about?
You ready for a great story?
Please.
In World War II, the horrific Nazis, my dad fought in World War II, created so much terribleness for society, for humanity. But one thing they did, because they had no regard for their prisoners of war, they did experiments on them. Because up until then, 1940s, if you broke your tibia, you got put in a cast and hope for the best in terms of rotation, and did it shorten, and you were now out of commission for months and months. Particularly if you broke your femur, which is also a tube, your thigh bone. And so our United States Air Force pilots who got shot down over Germany, when the war was over, told the United States doctors, you're not going to believe this, but I got shot down, I parachuted, I landed in a tree, I crashed, and I couldn't walk because both my femurs, both my tibias were broken. They took me to some hospital, and the next day I was walking.
Next day?
And the surgeons are going, okay, you must have been hit in the head because that's not possible. Because we put you in a body cast for 3 months. Well, make a long story short, we x-rayed those Air Force pilots and saw for the very first time the disregard that the Nazi surgeons had for hurting people. They were experimenting, and they said, we don't care if the bone dies. Let's see, and his name was Kunchner. Let's see if a Kunchner nail, where we shish kebab the bone, who cares if it dies? It's a prisoner of war, we're Nazis. But sure enough, it actually works.
And it kept the bone alive.
It kept the bone alive, and I would say, nothing good came from World War II. Well, something came good, at least in orthopedics. So that's when that technology came to the forefront.
That is unbelievable. Now, give me just only I can get excited about the fact that I learned that my shin bone actually is hollow on the inside. I hear bone marrow.
Right.
What is that? Where is that?
So bone marrow is the intramedullary canal, the sponginess. I actually have, because I'm using plastic sawbones to teach on the Weekend Warrior show with you, Kurt Sandoval, because that's what is available. But way back in the day, we could actually have skeletons in our office for teaching that were from real people.
Wow.
And here's one.
Really?
So here is what it looks like.
Wow. This is a real bone.
That's a real human bone.
Oh,
and
my
you
goodness.
can see the cortex, the outer straw plastic.
Yep.
But rather, hollow is the operative term.
Right.
But really, it's a spongy type of bone that is in the center. And that bone marrow makes our red blood cells. It's responsible for lots of things that we have. It's not just an empty space, but it is not a problem to actually put the rod down the center.
So, Eli, if we can go back to Jordan Travis, the quarterback from Florida State. So he has this injury.
So going back to Jordan Travis, going back to Gordon Hayward, different than Paul George. His fracture is not in the midshaft like Paul George, where we would shish kebab it. He's down here where it's fractured and it's rotated out of position. So, as a surgeon, the technology of the rod doesn't allow us to use that shish kebab. It won't work because the joint is under such forces for rotation. What we need to do for that fracture, for that injury, is, and I brought one from the operating room, a plate, which is basically that titanium flat surface with multiple holes in it that allow screws to be put through.
Oh my
that
goodness.
allow me. So, Eli, let's take a look at the jigsaw puzzle. Because when you take your scalpel and you open up the leg and you're seeing this injury, it's in pieces. And truly, you as the surgeon, it's as though you open that box of the jigsaw puzzle.
Wow.
And you're looking at these fragments, and you know what it's like to do a jigsaw puzzle. You're certain that it goes in that spot, and it's gonna. And you also know that if you gotta force it, it's not the right piece.
It doesn't fit.
And that's exactly right. And there is this amazing, warm, fuzzy feeling you get as a surgeon, Kurt Sandoval, when you actually take that one exploded fragment and lay it back in. It's as though you're putting it in, and it's just like, it talks to you. I'm a sculptor. It's like the stone tells me what to hit next. The bone goes, very good, Dr. Klapper. Very good.
Yeah.
And you then use a pin or a clamp to hold it in place, and you put the whole jigsaw puzzle back the way you want, and then you put the plate on, and then permanent screws to lock it in so it prevents any kind of rotation.
Wow. That is so descriptive. And at some point, I've just got to come to surgery with you. We've been doing this show now. I'm like, I got to see this stuff.
Yeah.
When you put that piece back together.
Pieces.
And that's where I was going with that. I'm assuming just because how long you've done this, you know, oh, I need to use this type of screw or that type of screw, or, oh, I can't go quite as tight, or here I got to go even tighter. Is that accurate?
There is a major conversation going on in your head. Those fragments are telling you this is too small of a piece. You ain't going to be able to get that size screw. This one will only be amenable to a pin. You better lock these two little pieces and make one big piece out of it, and then take that construct and add it. I mean, where you work first. Our priority is always to put the joint back together again, because that's the key. You can even accept a little bit of missing in the shaft, a little bit. You really want perfect. But the goal is to make sure that the joint itself is perfect, because when a bone breaks, we worry about two things. Will it heal, and will it heal in the correct position? Rotation, shortening, those different axes we worried about. But when a fracture, which is the case here, involves a joint, the third thing we worry about is arthritis later on. So it's very important, if the fracture did go into the joint, we have to make sure that we have all of those pieces back together.
I'm glad you brought up arthritis, because when we were taping last time, that came up, and I was thinking later as I was listening to it, I should have followed up on that. I hear arthritis. I've heard of arthritis. Give me a deeper Klapper vision. What is arthritis?
Arthritis is your car has tires. You bought brand new tires, and you see how thick the tread is. And then you go ride your car. The cartilage in your hip, in your knee, in your ankle, in your elbow, all of our joints are coated with a smooth surface of the tire tread. Arthritis is, now look at your car, those tires 20,000 miles later. The tread is bald. You don't see that. That's exactly what we see in surgery, is the cartilage has worn, the tire has worn through, and now you're seeing the wheel underneath.
Wow. And you can't, in most cases, go get a new tire.
You cannot.
Right.
You cannot. Just despite the promises, there's no shampoo growing hair on top of my head. You ain't getting new cartilage.
That's why you're a team, because you're talking about your head, and I'm like, I need a haircut.
Yeah,
Know? Hey, we're going to have more on the Weekend Warrior with Dr. Robert Klapper from Cedars-Sinai. I'm Kurt Sandoval. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Weekend Warrior Show. I'm your host, Kurt Sandoval, along with Dr. Robert Klapper from Cedars-Sinai. I didn't know you were at the Rams-Cleveland game yesterday.
Yes, I went with my daughter.
Awesome.
And my whole career started going to games when Kobe Bryant was a rookie, and I got season tickets to the Lakers. And my daughter was a little one at the time, so she got to see 5 championships, and I many a time sitting next to her. My wife would go also, but it was really great too. Now she's a mom and I'm a grandfather, so my wife watched the grandson, and to go with my daughter to this happening, if you will, it was just a great moment in my life.
That's priceless. So, and we didn't talk about this before the show, but you were at the game, and there was a pass in the second quarter to Puka Nacua, and he doesn't get up. And I had asked Sean McVay afterwards, I said, in my time watching football, and I didn't say 30 plus years, but when a guy doesn't get up, A, and B, is walking so gingerly, you're like, okay, he's done for the day. I hope he's not done for the season. And lo and behold, he's back after halftime, and they do an end around, and he runs 37 yards. As an orthopedic surgeon, were you a little surprised?
Yes.
Yeah, right?
He, because he's as tough as they come, so he's not milking it. That's a real sense of, I'm out of it. Now, you don't get a concussion because your shoulder's hurt.
Right.
But you get driven into the ground, and you're on. You know what I appreciated, though, because my tickets are on the Cleveland side, so I got to actually look and see.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the fraternity, the brotherhood of what really is going on in professional sports. We don't talk enough about it because there is enough negative to talk about.
Right.
But you really need to highlight the positives.
Yep.
And that is, they walk the walk, they talk they all have the same kind of life. And I just I love, hockey kind of started it when they shake hands in the lineup afterwards. But more and more what I love seeing in football and in basketball is when the game's over, that both teams, hey brother, it was great to play.
That's exactly right. There's such and brother is the right word. It's such a mutual admiration society.
So they made space for him. So, that no one knew how bad it was going to be. One guy got down on his knees, started to pray, I assume.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful thing to behold, and it was topped off because he actually did come back and do well.
It was astonishing. Well, Joe Flacco, the ageless 38-year-old former Super Bowl quarterback, was at quarterback because Deshaun Watson was lost for the season.
Right.
And he was hurt a couple of weeks ago. And we want to talk about Deshaun. What a great athlete. And really, when you look at what Cleveland has done from a win-loss standpoint, this dude's the reason why.
For sure.
And it's one of my favorite things about sports is even when you talk about defensive players becoming, an MVP, I heard Aaron Donald this week saying, no. He's like, it's great, defensive player of the year, but the quarterback is the most important because he touches the ball every play. And Deshaun Watson doesn't touch the ball anymore because when I read this, he has a displaced fracture of his shoulder.
Of his glenoid.
No,
Right. No, but of his shoulder. You're right. No, you're right.
Of his what? His
Right.
glenoid?
So
Hold on. Did I get that right?
glenoid, you got that right.
I want to just say, hey, we're talking about the glenoid today. That's going to impress a lot of people.
Combine Glendale and Android.
That's it.
Glenoid.
Glenoid. That's a good way to remember things. Okay. So when you heard the displaced, is the glenoid? What is the glenoid? If I'm going to say it, I got to know it.
So I brought a model, the anatomy, and go ahead and lift your right hand, Kurt.
Okay.
So
do that.
the design of our shoulder, fascinating, because it's the most mobile joint in the body, and it's made up of the ball and the socket joint. The ball is the top of the humerus bone, okay? Kind of looks like a billiard ball or a golf ball. And the socket is called the glenoid.
Oh.
And it's designed to only allow for movement from side of your body to 90 degrees. But you just showed me that
I can go up.
So how does the body do that? The entire construct, the glenoid, is the end of the scapula. Right. So the scapula, the shoulder blade, coalesces to form the socket, the glenoid. And what allows you to go from 90 to 180 is that if you were able to feel someone else's scapula or shoulder blade as they go from 90 to 180, you will feel that the entire shoulder blade scapula moves on your rib cage. So the construct only goes 0 to 90, but it goes to 180 if the entirety now moves 90 degrees.
And seamlessly.
Seamlessly.
Right? That's there's not a hitch.
No. And there are 17, not 16, not 8, there's 17 different muscles that attach to the shoulder blade. To show off, I can name them all, but I'm not going to do that right now. But they all have a role in this movement three-dimensionally. But the glenoid, which is what we're talking about now, is the socket of this ball and socket joint. Now, it's very important for the weekend warriors that are listening and seeing this to understand, where else do we have a ball and socket joint? Your hip is a ball and socket joint. But your hip can't do 180 degrees.
Right.
Your shoulder can. Why is that possible? And it's because the sphere of the humerus, the top of the shoulder bone, the humerus bone, is a ball. So is your femoral head. Same thing. But what's different is the socket. So in the hip, the socket is as though I put this golf ball. Go ahead and hold the coffee cup. The socket is as deep as with bone. The acetabulum, the ball and socket joint of your hip, is like the golf ball inside
like that,
the coffee cup. Exactly right.
Wow.
Or better yet, to the side. Yes, exactly. It's upside down. Exactly right. Your shoulder joint, to give you so much more motion than your hip joint, same ball, but instead go ahead and hold the saucer. Look how flat and how shallow it is.
Oh my gosh, what a great Klapper vision.
So here's the best Klapper vision. It's a ball, the socket is the tee.
Wow.
Now, what gives this joint that's so mobile stability. If it's so shallow, Dr. Klapper, every time I move, it's going to pop out. It's going to dislocate. And that is because of the famous structures you hear about, the labrum, the rotator cuff, the capsule. These are the structures that surround the golf tee to help keep the ball in place. But when you break the tee, split it open.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking down here, Eli, because this is the Paul George down the shaft fracture.
Right. But you're talking more up
Right.
here.
You split in any way. Now the pressure of the ball is a deforming force.
Right.
That's going to actually, what's the long-term consequence of leaving a displaced, meaning the pieces have moved. Non-displaced means they're just cracked. Displaced means the pieces are moving away and you have this deforming force of the ball pushing on it. You got to worry about it dislocating. You got to worry about arthritis later on. And you got to worry about pain. And in a quarterback, any of those things will now allow you to have less motion because of pain, swelling, and it's just not working properly. And that is why you have a displaced glenoid fracture. You have a crack that's pulled apart of the tee for the golf ball to sit on. You're going to surgery. We have to put the jigsaw puzzle back together again, put some screws in.
Okay, a couple of points. First of all, there's 8 days of Hanukkah, 12 days of Christmas, but there's 17 muscles that hold that whole shoulder thing together. Now, can I use your Klapper vision of the tee? And
you will never see a golf ball and a tee in the same way again, Kurt.
Exactly. And if you know anything about me, there's a lot of displacement right here. The labrum.
Yes.
So where is the labrum in this equation?
So the labrum is a rubber washer, thick gasket that is 360 around the top of the golf tee. And so if it's deeper, it makes the tee deeper, then it sits deeper into a socket, but the socket is bone and now labrum. And that's actually the secret to how you can have stability in moving your shoulder, and yet you have all this range of motion. It's funny when the body asks for two things that are opposite. You want it to be stable so it doesn't pull apart, but you also want all this motion.
Yeah.
And that is the miracle of how our body works.
What you just explained, honestly, about this, and my arm only goes 90, but there's no hitch, and it seamlessly, the scapula moves to get
over
it going
the rib cage.
And then you think, well, okay, and I'm going to borrow your golf ball. Then why doesn't my hip do that? Well, because it's this.
Bangs in.
It bangs in. It's just, we've talked about this. It's not a religious show, but we both believe in God. And it just seems like the most advanced architectural design is the human body. It's unbelievable.
And just think, Kurt, I get to work on it as a surgeon, not ever really understanding or have the engineering to create a body. None of us can. But what we're good at is, it used to look this way. Don't be a big shot. Just put it back the way it looked before. And when I can get story after story of what I see when I open up your knee or your hip or your shoulder. It just, sometimes it takes my breath away just to see how elegant the anatomy is. And yet, I'm being asked to operate on it because it's failing in some way. I'm being asked to make the anatomy better than the engineer who created it. I mean, you almost can't take yourself that seriously. Many surgeons do, which is why they're a big pain in the neck to be around.
Right.
But get over yourself. You're working on something that has masterfully been put together.
I want to take it just a half step further and advance it because it's a weekend warrior show, and this guy is a warrior, but there's a lot of weekend warriors out there who have played a lot of tennis, who've played a lot of golf, who've maybe thrown a lot of baseballs or softballs. It's really fascinating that when I talk to you, how does the weekend warrior know, okay, I can live with this? Is it an inconvenience? Because this Klapper vision of this thing right here how do you know when it's time to get it fixed versus do I get a shot for inflammation? What do you tell people in that situation?
When we progress this show, which I'm very much looking forward to the interactive, the great Austin and Eli and Dave who will make this magic happen, you will be in the room with me when a caller, a weekend warrior, is going to call in. And even though I'm not examining them, but you're going to hear me ask certain questions. And that history that I'm taking, what do you do for a living? What recreationally do you do? How long has it been? Did it happen acutely? Is this a chronic problem? Are you a righty or a lefty? I mean, the questions that I'll be asking from doing this for 35 years and seeing 100 patients a week and doing over 16,000 surgeries, but this intimacy that you get with how the body works, it all begins with the history.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that it's almost like a coloring book. The history allows me to make the black outline. The physical exam gives me 2 colors to color in. The MRI, the CAT scan, the X-ray, I get a couple of more colors to color it in. And then when I go to surgery, I have a full-on coloring book of the anatomy.
And you know what to do. That's great stuff. Dr. Klapper, always a pleasure. Good stuff.
Okay.
We'll have plenty more on the Weekend Warrior Show with Dr. Robert Klapper. I'm Kurt Sandoval. Have a great day, everybody.